The city was quiet, wrapped in a soft blanket of snow. Streetlights flickered through the mist, casting long, trembling shadows across the sidewalks. Inside a small diner at the edge of the city, the air was warm but heavy with the smell of coffee, grease, and faint traces of peppermint from the Christmas decorations. Ilara wiped down the last table near the window, her sleeves rolled up, exposing pale arms that had grown used to work and solitude. She moved with quiet precision, as if each motion could erase the emptiness she felt inside. Outside, couples and families hurried past, their laughter carried on the wind, sharp and distant. Ilara had learned to become invisible on nights like this, to fade into the background as the world celebrated a holiday she had long stopped expecting. Her life had always been a series of routines. Wake up early, make her way to the diner, clean, serve, and retreat into the silence of her small apartment afterward. Friends were few, family was farther still, and love felt like a story told to someone else, in another life. Yet she found a strange comfort in the predictability of it, in the rhythmic clatter of dishes and the hum of the old neon sign outside. Tonight, she had finished her rounds earlier than usual. The diner was empty now, save for the lingering smell of fried potatoes and roasted coffee beans. She leaned against the counter, letting the silence fill the space around her. A soft chime from the front door echoed through the room. She glanced up, expecting a last-minute customer, or perhaps a passerby taking refuge from the cold. But it was not anyone ordinary. The figure that stepped inside seemed to carry an aura of the night itself. A long coat brushed the floor. Dark hair fell in waves over sharp features, and eyes gray, steady, and unreadable, surveyed the diner with an intensity that made the room feel smaller. Ilara froze, a rag still in her hand, as the woman approached. "Good evening," the woman said, her voice smooth, controlled, like a melody wrapped around steel. She smiled faintly, a small curl of amusement at the edge of her lips. "I'm looking for someone." Ilara's chest tightened. She didn't know why, but her instincts told her that this person was not here to linger or chat. There was power in the way she moved, in the way she carried herself. It was the kind of presence that demanded attention without asking for it. "You found her," the woman said, finally stopping a few feet away. Her eyes, dark yet soft, met Ilara's. "Come home." Come home." The words struck her like lightning. They were simple, yet loaded with meaning she could not yet decipher. Fear prickled along her spine. Curiosity flared in her chest. And a strange pull, deeper than anything she had ever felt, rooted her to the floor. "Home?" Ilara asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. I don't understand." The woman's lips curved again. "Yes. Home. It's time." Her tone carried no question, no negotiation, just a certainty that made Ilara's heart pound unevenly. Ilara's mind raced. She did not know this woman. She did not know why she was being spoken to in this way. And yet, she felt a strange warmth, like the flicker of a candle in a dark room. She felt seen, truly seen, in a way that no one had ever seen her before. I can't just leave," Ilara stammered. I work here. It's Christmas Eve." The woman tilted her head, observing her. Her gaze was piercing but not cruel. It carried curiosity, patience, and something else, something almost tender. "Work can wait," she said softly, almost kindly. "You have been alone long enough. Let me take you somewhere you belong." Ilara's hands trembled. She felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The cold outside called to her, but not as strongly as this strange, impossible feeling in her chest. She had always believed that she was meant to be alone, that she had no one to depend on, no one to reach for. And now, she was being offered a doorway into a world she had never imagined. The diner seemed smaller all at once, the fluorescent lights harsh against the soft glow in the woman's eyes. Ilara's thoughts collided, fear and longing, caution and desire, logic and impulse. She wanted to refuse, to retreat back to her familiar life of solitude. but some invisible thread seemed to pull her forward. Finally, she spoke, barely audible. "Who are you?" The woman's smile widened slightly. "I am Valeria. You may have heard of my family." Alara's stomach twisted. The name sent a shiver down her spine, though she could not explain why. There were rumors in the city, stories whispered in dark alleys and hushed cafes about Valeria's family. Power, influence, danger. She had always thought of them as untouchable, distant, a world she would never encounter. And now, the daughter of that world stood in front of her, offering her a chance to step across the boundary between fear and desire. You want me to come with you?" Alara asked, her voice trembling. "Just like that?" Valeria nodded. "I've watched you, Alara, more closely than you know. You are different, stronger than you think. And tonight, you do not need to be alone." The words were magnetic. Alara felt herself leaning forward, almost against her will. She did not fully understand why she trusted this woman, why she wanted to follow her, and yet, a part of her, the part that had been aching for warmth, for recognition, for a sense of belonging, whispered that this was her chance. Before she could answer, Valeria reached into her coat and produced a small envelope. She held it out to Alara. "Everything you need is inside. Consider it an invitation, but know this. It is not just a home I offer. It is a life. A choice." Alara hesitated. Her mind screamed caution. There were stories of people like Valeria, of power and danger and lives that could consume you if you stepped too close. And yet, she could not bring herself to step back. Not tonight. Not when the night felt so unbearably cold, and the warmth of the diner seemed so fragile, so fleeting. Her fingers closed around the envelope. The paper was thick, elegant, and strangely comforting. It felt heavy with promises she did not yet understand, yet light enough to suggest freedom, escape, and maybe hope. Valeria watched her with patience and an intensity that made Alara's heart pound. The snow outside pressed against the glass, the wind howling softly, like the city itself held its breath. And then, without another word, Valeria turned toward the door. Alara felt the silence of the diner swell around her, as if the walls themselves were urging her to make her choice. The smell of coffee, the flicker of the neon sign, the shadows on the floor, all of it seemed to fade beneath the weight of possibility. Finally, she made her decision. She set down the rag she had been holding and followed Valeria to the door. The moment she stepped outside, the cold air bit at her cheeks. But the fear she had carried for so long was not as sharp as the thrill that ran through her veins. The black car waited, silent and imposing, like a creature of the night. Valeria opened the door for her, offering a hand that trembled with neither weakness nor hesitation. Alara took it. The car door closed with a soft thud, and the diner receded into the distance. The lights, the warmth, the emptiness she had known, all of it seemed to vanish behind her. She did not know what awaited her, or if she was making the right choice. But for the first time in years, she felt alive. And in the quiet hum of the engine, as snowflakes danced past the windows, Alara realized that she was no longer alone. Valeria glanced at her from the driver's seat, eyes steady and unreadable, and said softly, almost like a promise, "You'll see. Everything changes tonight." Alara swallowed, a mixture of fear and longing twisting in her chest. She wanted to ask what she meant, but she knew some truths had to be discovered, not explained. The city streets passed in silence, the snow reflecting 1,000 tiny lights, and somewhere deep inside, Alara felt the first spark of something she had long thought impossible, a sense of hope, of belonging, and of a story that was only beginning. Outside, the snow continued to fall, heavy and relentless. Inside, two lives were about to collide in ways neither could yet imagine. And somewhere, beneath the shadowed streets, the city waited, holding its breath. The black car glided through the city streets, snowflakes swirling in the pale glow of streetlights. The world outside seemed quieter, almost unreal. as if time itself had slowed to let this night stretch into something extraordinary. Alara's fingers curled around the envelope in her lap. She had not dared open it yet. She did not know if she wanted to. Every instinct told her she was stepping into a life far beyond the one she had known. Yet every part of her ached to see what awaited. Valeria's eyes, sharp and steady, remained fixed on the road. The woman's presence filled the car with warmth and a strange sense of authority. Alara had never met anyone like her, someone who seemed untouchable, and yet, in these quiet moments, almost human. "Where are we going?" Alara asked again, her voice trembling slightly, betraying both fear and curiosity. Valeria's lips curved in a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Somewhere you will understand," she said. Her tone was firm, yet not harsh. "Somewhere that might feel like home, if you are willing to take the risk." The car turned off the main streets, sliding onto narrower lanes, and soon, the snow was heavier, muffling the sound of the city. They arrived at a gate wrought of dark iron, towering and intricate, crowned with spikes that gleamed faintly under the dim lamps. Beyond it, a mansion stretched into the night, a structure of shadows and grandeur, tall and imposing, with windows reflecting the muted starlight. Alara swallowed hard. She had never seen anything so beautiful, yet so intimidating. The building was alive with history and secrets, every stone seeming to hum with a story it had carried for generations. Valeria stepped out first, her boots silent against the snow. She extended her hand again. "Come." Alara hesitated, looking at the gate and then at the mansion, feeling a wave of both wonder and apprehension. Finally, she took Valeria's hand and stepped forward. The warmth of Valeria's grip sent a shiver through her, not of cold, but of something unspoken, something electric in its quiet force. Inside, the mansion was vast and dark, yet warm. The air smelled of polished wood, rare spices, and faint smoke from a fireplace somewhere deeper within. The hallways stretched like arteries, lined with portraits whose eyes seemed almost alive, following her as she moved. Each room whispered secrets she could not yet understand, and each shadow seemed to move with a purpose. "Where am I?" Alara asked, her voice small in the enormous space. "You are somewhere between fear and choice," Valeria replied softly. "Somewhere you may finally see what it means to be truly alive." Alara felt her heart race. She had been lonely for so long, moving through life like a ghost among the living. And now, she was in the center of a world that both terrified and fascinated her. Every instinct screamed caution, yet another part of her longed to stay, to explore, to belong. Valeria led her through the grand corridors, pausing occasionally to touch a portrait, to adjust a curtain, to move with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. Alara noticed how every gesture Valeria made commanded attention. Yet it was not arrogance. There was something softer beneath, something hidden, something longing. They reached a study, a room lined with dark bookshelves, the fire crackling in a wide hearth. Valeria gestured for Alara to sit in a chair near the warmth. "Rest," she said simply. "You have stepped into a world you do not yet understand. It is only fair that you are given a moment to breathe before it consumes you." Alara sank into the chair, staring into the fire. Flames danced across the room, casting shadows on the walls and on Valeria's face. She looked powerful, commanding, untouchable. And yet, in the quiet moments, Alara noticed hints of something else, loneliness, perhaps, or a weariness that only someone who had lived surrounded by walls could carry. Valeria knelt slightly near the fire, close enough that Alara could see the subtle details of her expression. "I know this is overwhelming," she said softly. "I know you might feel afraid. But you are here for a reason, Alara. You are not like others. You have a strength I have rarely seen." Alara looked down at her hands, unsure how to respond. She had lived her life feeling small, unseen, and unimportant. No one had ever called her strong. Not in this way, not with such quiet certainty. "Why me?" she asked finally. voice barely above a whisper. Valeria's eyes softened. Because you can see me. Not just my family's power. Not just the name I carry. You can see me. Alara's chest tightened. No one had ever looked at her like that. Truly looked, beyond her job, her appearance, or her quiet existence. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet alive in a way she had never known. The room fell silent. The only sound, the soft crackle of the fire and the distant howl of the wind outside. Alara felt as if she were suspended between two worlds, the life she had always known and the one Valeria had offered. Then Valeria stood and moved toward a side door. She returned moments later with a small key, handing it to Alara. This is for you, your room. You may explore, but remember, every corner of this house holds more than it seems. Secrets are part of life here. Alara took the key, her fingers brushing Valeria's for an instant. That small contact sent warmth through her, a strange reassurance that she was not entirely alone in this vast, mysterious place. She followed Valeria down another hall, the shadows deeper here, the air heavier with history. When they reached a door at the end of a corridor, Valeria stopped. Here, she said, your room. Rest. Tomorrow, everything will begin to make sense. Alara opened the door to find a room both elegant and intimate. Heavy curtains framed a snow-covered window, and a bed with soft blankets promised warmth she had almost forgotten. A desk held a few essentials, stationery, a candle, and a small notebook. On the bedside table lay a folded note. In Valeria's hand, Alara unfolded it. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made her pulse quicken. Some choices change everything. Trust your heart, and you will see what your life can be. V. She held the note to her chest, breathing deeply. The snow outside had slowed to a gentle fall, quiet as a whisper. And yet, inside her, a storm of emotion raged. Fear, curiosity, hope, and something else she did not yet name. Hours passed in a quiet haze. Alara explored the room, touched the heavy books, traced the patterns in the curtains, and listened to the wind brushing against the mansion walls. Each sound, each shadow, each crackle of the fire made her realize that this was a world she had never imagined. And yet, a world that might finally feel like it could belong to her. Late into the night, curiosity overtook caution. She opened the envelope Valeria had given her in the car. Inside were photographs, notes, and small keys, traces of Valeria's family, the mansion, and the life she led. There were pictures of Valeria as a child, moments of laughter and loss, and a few folded papers with careful instructions for navigating the house. Alara's fingers trembled as she read, feeling the weight of a life both dangerous and fascinating. She understood, suddenly, that stepping into this world meant stepping into stories that were not hers yet but might be, if she had the courage. A sudden noise outside the room, a soft footstep, perhaps made her heart leap. She looked toward the door. Valeria appeared in the doorway, eyes unreadable, yet filled with an intensity that made Alara shiver. You shouldn't have gone through those, Valeria said, her voice calm, almost gentle. Some things are meant to be discovered in time, not all at once. But now, you cannot leave. Not yet. Alara's chest tightened. She had expected fear, perhaps anger, or even dismissal, but what she felt instead was something more complex, an undeniable connection, an invitation into trust, and a tension that set her heart racing. Valeria stepped closer, her gaze softening for the briefest moment. You are not just a guest here, Alara. You are part of this story now. And every story has a moment when the ordinary breaks, and the impossible begins. Alara swallowed hard. She felt the truth of the words settle deep in her chest. She did not know what dangers or wonders lay ahead. She did not know if she would survive the shadows she had stepped into. And yet, she felt alive. Outside, the snow continued to fall, heavy and silent. Inside, two hearts. One cautious, one commanding, hovered on the edge of something extraordinary. And as the night stretched on, Alara realized that she had entered a world that might change everything. The first light of dawn barely reached the mansion through heavy, frost-covered windows. The snow outside had turned from soft flakes into a quiet white blanket, hiding the city in a still, frozen hush. Inside, the mansion was waking slowly. The shadows in the corridors seemed longer today, stretching like living things, and the faint scent of rare spices lingered in the air, a reminder of Valeria's world, a world far beyond Alara's previous life of quiet routine. Alara woke to the soft creak of the floorboards outside her room. For a moment, she lay still, listening. The house was alive in a way that was both fascinating and unsettling. She had spent the night reading the letters and photographs Valeria had left, piecing together glimpses of a family shaped by power, tradition, and hidden grief. The weight of it made her chest ache. But it also sparked a strange determination within her. She did not know this world. And yet, she felt a part of it already. As if the mansion itself had claimed her. A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts. Alara. Valeria's voice was calm, yet it carried an edge that made her pulse quicken. Breakfast is ready. Come down when you are ready. Alara dressed quickly, choosing a simple blouse and skirt, and took a deep breath before stepping into the hall. The walls were adorned with paintings of ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow her as she walked. Valeria waited at the bottom of the grand staircase, her posture regal, commanding attention even in the quiet of the morning. "You've been reading," Valeria said, a faint note of curiosity in her voice. She studied Alara, her gray eyes unreadable. "I did not expect you to go through the letters so quickly. I wanted to understand," Alara said softly, her fingers brushing against the envelope still tucked in her pocket. "I wanted to know who you are, and why you brought me here." Valeria stepped closer, the air between them charged with a subtle tension. "Understanding comes with time," she said. "And reasons. Sometimes, we do not see them until they reveal themselves." They walked together to the dining room, where the table was set with precision. Candles flickered in crystal holders, casting light across polished silverware and fine china. The contrast between the warmth of the room and the cold world outside was striking, and Alara felt herself both intimidated and captivated. As they ate, Valeria spoke of the mansion, of the responsibilities that came with her family's power, and of the isolation that had shaped her life. Each word seemed to carry weight beyond the ordinary, as if every sentence held both truth and caution. Alara listened, her curiosity deepening. She realized that behind the beauty, the wealth, and the authority, Valeria carried a quiet loneliness, a loneliness that mirrored her own, though in a far more complicated and dangerous world. "Why me?" Alara asked again, unable to keep the question from surfacing. "Why did you choose me to bring here?" Valeria's gaze softened for the first time in a long while. She looked at Alara not as an intruder, not as someone to be judged or controlled, but as someone remarkable, someone rare. "Because you see me," she said simply, "you do not fear everything that I am, and you are not afraid to be yourself. That is something I have not found often." Alara felt warmth spread through her chest, a flicker of something she had thought lost: acceptance, understanding, connection. And yet, alongside it, a flicker of fear remained. She knew that she had entered a world full of shadows, and even those she cared for might hold danger. After breakfast, Valeria led her through the mansion, room by room. There were libraries filled with rare books, music rooms where instruments rested silently, as if waiting for hands to bring them to life, and corridors lined with mirrors that reflected more than just their images. Alara noticed how the house seemed alive in its own way. Each object, each painting, carrying a story and a warning. In one of the upper halls, Valeria paused before a large, locked door. "I have kept this closed for a reason," she said. "It holds memories, both beautiful and painful. Not everyone is ready to see it." No, Ilara's curiosity surged, but she also felt the weight of Valeria's words. "Will I ever see it?" she asked. Valeria looked at her for a long moment. Perhaps, she said, but only when you are ready to understand more than just the surface of this life. The day passed in quiet, intense moments. Alara began to notice small gestures from Valeria that revealed the complexity beneath her composed exterior. A hand lingering on a doorframe, a glance that carried unspoken questions, a small sigh when she thought no one was watching. Each detail painted a picture of someone both strong and vulnerable, someone capable of command, yet longing for trust and connection. By evening, the snow outside had thickened, muffling the sounds of the city entirely. The mansion, grand and imposing in the daylight, became a place of shadows and whispered secrets. Alara wandered through a corridor she had not yet explored, her steps cautious, the envelope in her pocket a comforting weight. She stopped at a small study tucked away behind a heavy curtain. Inside were letters, photographs, and traces of a past tragedy that Valeria had endured, memories of loss, of choices made in the name of family, and of burdens carried alone. Her fingers trembled as she touched the papers, feeling the weight of Valeria's life pressing softly against her. She understood, then, the enormity of the world she had entered. It was not just a home, it was a legacy, a chain of stories, and Valeria had invited her to be a part of it. A sudden movement startled her. Valeria was standing in the doorway, her presence both commanding and gentle. "You shouldn't have seen that. But now you cannot leave," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Some doors, once opened, change everything." Alara's heart raced. She had expected anger, perhaps scolding, maybe even dismissal. But what she felt instead was something deeper. A connection, fragile and intense, that tethered her to this world and to Valeria in ways she could not yet name. "Why? Why me?" Alara whispered, her voice trembling. Valeria stepped closer, the flickering candlelight casting shadows across her face. "Because you are brave enough to step into a life that most would fear. Because you see beyond the surface. And because I trust you, even when I should not." The words struck Alara like a spark against dry kindling. She realized then that trust, affection, and connection were not weaknesses, they were choices. And choices could change everything. Valeria's guarded walls, the same walls that had kept her safe and isolated, were crumbling not through force, but through the quiet, patient courage of someone willing to care. As night fell fully over the mansion, the shadows grew longer, deeper, and more mysterious. The storm outside raged quietly, snow piling against the windows, blanketing the world in silence. Alara and Valeria found themselves standing near the fireplace, the warmth against their faces contrasting with the cold world beyond the walls. Valeria's gaze held Alara's, steady, intense, and unyielding. "Tonight," she said softly, "you will see both the beauty and the danger of this life. And you will need to choose whether to be part of it or to walk away." Alara's chest tightened. She felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Yet she also felt something she had not felt in years, a spark of courage, a pulse of hope, and a yearning for something more than solitude. Before she could respond, a noise from the hall, a faint, deliberate footstep made them both tense. Valeria's hand brushed against Alara's shoulder, a small but grounding gesture. "Someone approaches," she said, "and their intentions are not known. You must decide quickly where your trust lies." Alara swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She felt the fear, the excitement, and the undeniable pull of the bond forming between them. For the first time, she understood that stepping into Valeria's world meant embracing both danger and connection, darkness and warmth, power and vulnerability. As the footsteps grew nearer, the fire flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. Alara realized that this night, this very moment, was a threshold. Once crossed, there was no turning back. And yet, for the first time in her life, she did not feel alone. Valeria's hand found hers, their fingers brushing lightly but with purpose. "We face this together," she said, her voice low, calm, and unshakable. Alara nodded, a mixture of fear and determination settling in her chest. She did not know what awaited them in the shadows, but she knew she was ready to face danger, ready to embrace the unknown, ready to step fully into a world that promised both peril and profound connection. Outside, the snow continued to fall, silent and heavy. Inside, two hearts, one cautious, one commanding, prepared to confront the unknown. And in that moment, Alara understood that life, when shared, could be as thrilling as it was terrifying. The night had deepened, and the mansion, grand and shadowed, seemed to breathe with the weight of secrets it had held for generations. Outside, snow fell thick and steady, muffling the sounds of the city and creating a world suspended between reality and dream. Inside, every hallway, every room, seemed alive with anticipation, as if the mansion itself knew that the moment of reckoning had arrived. Ilara's hands trembled slightly as she followed Valeria through the dim corridors. The echoes of their footsteps seemed louder than they should, bouncing off the high ceilings and dark portraits. Ilara's heart raced not only from fear but from the pull of something she could no longer ignore. The connection she felt with Valeria. It was more than fascination. It was trust, hope, and a quiet courage she had not known she possessed. "The time has come," Valeria said softly, her voice steady, commanding. "Tonight, you will see the truth of this world, and you will decide where you belong." Alara nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had wondered all day what truth could mean. Now, with shadows twisting around them, and snow pressing against the windows, she felt the weight of it all. This was more than a house, more than a family. It was power, history, responsibility, and danger intertwined. And she was no longer an observer. She was a part of it. They stopped at the end of a long corridor. A door stood there, plain yet imposing, as if it guarded more than just a room. Valeria turned to her, eyes searching, studying her as one might study a delicate flame in the dark. "Are you ready?" she asked. Ilara took a deep breath, her fingers brushing the envelope still tucked in her coat. She felt the warmth of Valeria's hand on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. "I'm ready," she whispered. Valeria nodded and opened the door. Inside was a room bathed in firelight, with walls lined in books, letters, and photographs, evidence of a life lived under both privilege and burden. At the center of the room, a large, ornate desk held a single envelope, addressed to Valeria in a familiar hand. Valeria moved to the desk, her expression unreadable, and opened the envelope. She read the contents silently, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. Ilara watched her, noting the rare vulnerability in her posture, the way her shoulders shifted as if carrying a weight too heavy for one person. Finally, Valeria looked up. Her gray eyes were intense, searching. "This changes everything," she said quietly. "But it also means we have a choice. Everything can end tonight, or begin anew." Ilara's chest tightened. She had feared this night, the unknown dangers, the shadows that followed Valeria's family. But she had also felt something stronger, something worth facing the fear for. "Then we choose," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "We choose, together." A faint sound echoed from the hallway, soft, deliberate footsteps that hinted at an approaching presence. Valeria's gaze sharpened, and her hand found Ilara's again, squeezing it lightly. "Stay close," she said. "We are not alone." The door opened, and a figure stepped into the room. Tall, imposing, and unreadable, they paused in the threshold, observing. Valeria's body tensed, a subtle shift in posture that spoke of authority and caution. "This is who you must trust," Valeria said, her voice low, almost a whisper meant only for Ilara. "And who you must confront. Fear is a test, not a guide." Ilara's heart raced. She had never imagined that stepping into this world would be so immediate, so real. The tension in the room was palpable. Yet alongside it was a quiet certainty, a thread of trust and courage binding her to Valeria. She felt the warmth of that connection, the strength it gave her, and she realized that fear, while sharp, was not enough to hold her back. The figure in the doorway spoke at last. Their voice was calm, measured, and carried a weight that seemed to press against the walls. "Valeria," they said, "you know what this means. Do not mistake kindness for weakness." Valeria's eyes narrowed, and she took a step forward. "I have chosen," she said firmly, "and this choice is mine to make. Whoever comes after will need to respect that." Elara, standing beside her, felt an unexpected surge of confidence. She had entered a world that demanded courage, loyalty, and trust. And now, with danger so close, she understood the truth of Valeria's words. Strength was not just in command, but in connection, in willingness to step forward when others might hesitate. The figure in the doorway made no move to advance, only observed, measuring the resolve in Valeria's stance and in Elara's quiet presence beside her. Finally, with a subtle nod, they retreated, leaving the room in silence once more. Valeria exhaled, the tension in her body softening slightly. She turned to Elara, her gaze softer now, almost vulnerable. "You see," she said quietly, "this life is not safe, but it is real. And sometimes, real is worth the danger." Elara nodded, understanding in a way she had not before. She had spent her life in quiet routine, surviving alone, avoiding risks, but now she realized that life truly began where fear ended, or where courage met it head-on. She felt a quiet strength settle inside her, a sense of belonging that had been absent for too long. The mansion, once a place of cold shadows, now felt warmer, alive in a new way. The firelight flickered across the walls, dancing over the books, letters, and photographs. It was a world of stories, of choices, of lives intertwined, and she was part of it now. Valeria stepped closer, her hand finding Elara's again. "You have changed tonight," she said softly. "More than you know." Elara met her gaze, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hope. "And you've changed me," she whispered, "by trusting me and letting me see you." A small, almost shy smile crossed Valeria's lips. "Perhaps," she said, "perhaps that is the beginning of something neither of us could have expected." They stood together in the firelight, two figures surrounded by shadows and warmth, by history and possibility. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in silence. But inside, the mansion was alive with quiet triumph. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and the weight of secrets, and emerged stronger, together. The night stretched on, long and silent, until the first hints of dawn brushed the horizon with soft, pale light. Elara and Valeria sat together, not speaking, but sharing the quiet comfort of presence. They had crossed a threshold, one from which there was no turning back, and yet, in that crossing, they had found a sense of home, trust, and possibility. At last, Valeria spoke, her voice soft, almost a murmur against the quiet. "Home is not a place, Elara. It is a choice. A choice to trust, to care, to risk everything for someone else. And tonight, you have chosen." Elara's heart swelled. She understood, fully, that life was not measured by solitude or safety, but by the courage to step into the unknown, by the willingness to trust and connect. She had been alone for so long, but no longer. She was part of something larger, something real, something alive. They watched the snow outside, the city slowly waking beneath a blanket of white. The danger was not gone, and the shadows of the mansion, of Valeria's world, remained. Yet, in the quiet glow of dawn, Elara felt a profound peace. She had found a place where she belonged, and a person whose presence transformed her life in ways she could not yet name. Valeria reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Elara's face. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we begin anew. But tonight is ours. Remember it. Hold it close. And know that you are no longer alone." Elara nodded, her fingers brushing against Valeria's. She felt warmth, strength, and an unspoken promise in that touch. "I won't forget," she said. "I'm not alone. Not anymore." The fire crackled, the snow continued to fall, and the mansion, vast and shadowed, seemed to sigh in quiet relief. Two hearts, once isolated, now beat in cautious harmony. Trust had been built, courage had been tested, and a connection forged that neither could ignore. Outside, the city remained silent, a world of possibilities beneath the heavy snow. Inside, in the mansion of shadows and secrets, Ilara and Valeria had discovered something more powerful than fear or authority. They had discovered each other, and the possibility of a life transformed by trust, courage, and love. As the first rays of sun touched the horizon, Ilara realized that her life had changed forever. The darkness she had feared had not consumed her. Instead, it had revealed the strength and warmth that lived within her, and the bond that could survive even the heaviest shadows. The mansion, once a place of cold authority and secrets, now felt alive with hope. And in that quiet, magical morning, Ilara understood fully that she had found more than a home. She had found a place where fear gave way to trust, solitude to connection, and uncertainty to choice. And for the first time in years, she smiled freely, knowing that the world outside might be cold, dark, and unpredictable. But inside, with Valeria, she had found something worth everything: belonging, trust, and the possibility of a shared life that neither could have imagined alone.